lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and back with me again, I got my boy Kevin Anthony Catalan here. We are going to be talking some Space Knights today. I'm very excited to have you back on the show, dude.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been like what 2 years since I did the first one.
Yeah. I don't know. Probably about 2 years.
It was the first printing. It was when I think I just graduated college.
It's been a long time. Yeah, that's the reason. Like you just said, it was first printing. That's why we're doing this with a PDF, because I don't want to ruin my fucking binding on the book trying to like hold it open. Yeah, the one you have has the Cosmic Lion Productions, which is where you are now being published through. But mine is when you were just doing it yourself, dude. And I'll real quick, since I don't have it under the microscope, and I said it before when we did the interview, the production quality, dude, is fucking top notch. It's not just the art that's dope, it's the production quality too, that a lot of work that you put into it. So I think that's important to say. I said it in our interview, but I wanted to mention it one more time since, you know, we're not doing it overhead. Very excited to have you back. I know we've been trying to do this specific episode, creator commentary. In that time, I've switched jobs, and it's just hard to adjust with scheduling, but I'm excited. Yeah, so let's get into it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad to be back. Well, this is the cover. Well, you said the first printing was different cover. Yeah. That was I don't think I could share it, but we probably can. It was a knight. He was green. That's the thing. And then one of the deals that I had with Eli when we first met up in August last year, he said he wanted a new cover. And in my mind too, like I do want a new cover. And we treated it like a variant cover at first. We're like, oh, maybe we just do a separate one for the, a reprint variant cover. But in the end, it became like the actual definitive cover for the first issue. And I think a lot of people responded better to this cover than the first one. And of course, I love Dark Knight is with a thing I kind of homage in a way, but without explicitly doing so. It's not the same pose, but it's the same feeling, covered in blood, and he's war torn, but space and knights. That was the thing approach with this. But yeah, and I made this to a poster too, and I made some for Heroes Con, and people still loved it, and I made it my banner. And some girl was walking by, she's like, that blue guy's scary. I'm like, I guess so, yeah. But yeah, man, this is the cover. And here's, we talk about design of earlier, like production design of the book. I treat my books like an actual physical thing that you want to own, and I treat it to where every page matters, and where they land and what type of content I put in that page matters. And so Space Knights is all about, it's a whole universe, and so like the actual content has to matter to the story. I can't just put random stuff. That's why I have ads. That's why I have like maps. I love maps on fantasy worlds. This is like space fantasy, and so it's a little bit of a guide to the world. And you can tell in that first printing, the map is different. And here, because I did some fixing, I was like, okay, I can draw these planets a bit better, name them better because I've changed some stuff in the story. And also, on the right side of this is kind of a clipping, because I love history too. I've always said that if I wasn't an artist, I'd probably be in astronomy or history, one of those two. And so this is like my love for that. I'm pouring everything I'm passionate about. So astronomy with space, of course, but with history, when you have little artifacts. So this is like a news clipping from the 10 years ago before the story starts, when the war started. So I put that in there, and it kind of gives you hints of how long it's been without saying outright to the audience of, oh, it's 10 years ago, this happened. But I'm just going to show you an object from that time, and you can just read it as much as you want.
Yeah, no, I love it. And plus, also one of the changes you did is you added the year in the bottom left, on the left page, bottom right corner. You added that you didn't have that in the original. It is kind of interesting to see the difference, because I was like, oh man, should I get the new version, or should I just just gift the original version to somebody? I was like, nah, I'm gonna
you gotta keep some people asked me about that too. Like some guy on Reddit said, yeah, you still have the first printings? I'm like, I don't, those are gone. I don't even own the first print. I only own the second print because my roommate gave it to me. She was like, you don't even own your own book? I'm like, no, I sold everything. And so she gave it to me, and that's why I own one. So other than that, I just have this other print too. But yeah, the year's there. I mean, I put the year afterwards in here too on the left side. Yeah. But I think in the map, the reason why I did that, because later on in Tales of Space Knights, the map is there again, but some things are different because that story takes place 10 years ago. So the map is a bit different because of the war. So, I love how things, when you look at war maps, things shift, and you look at countries are, like Yugoslavia is not there anymore, like that kind of thing. USSR is not there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about. So like here, where it's like all black a year, and then you have a face of, you talk about war, and then you think about the aftermath of war. I don't try to glorify it in a way like, oh my god, it's the cool battles and stuff. The first thing I want to show is the gore, the visceralness of blood and
fucking brains coming out.
Yeah. And it's colorful. That's the thing I want to do. Is like when you think of war stories, it's always so brown, and World War II is kind of just realistic. But this is space. This is something to be colorful, but with gore and just horror. And then the first dialogue, of course, isn't life beautiful? And then that's what you have this kind of. You have this blend of death and then beauty about life.
Yeah.
And I play around with
contrast.
Dialogue. Yeah. Exactly. So you read the dialogue more and more, and it's talking about the beauty of life, and think about like, oh, it's talking about kindness, love, and all that. And then but you have all this aftermath of a battle, and then you cut to the actual dialogue is actually an ad.
This TV page ad. Reminded me of Mahfood a little bit. I don't know why, but it did. Like I think I probably didn't tell you that when we originally talked about it.
No, I don't think so.
It definitely, like, I think your lettering where it says,
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I think that's, and then the face of this dude in the bottom left just looks like something Mahfood would throw in one of his comics. Like this particular guy, dude, with that fucking sleazy smile.
It is. That's what I was thinking about. With the way I think about war is sometimes it is profit. People make money out of this stuff, but in here I made it to where, like I said, it's sleazy. This is a sleazy slate salesman talking about a spray bottle, talking about cleaning stuff and gifting it, but it's before the image they're showing is war because it's so normal to them that this is what it is, and it's sponsored by the Anti-Elf Commission. This is something that it talks about, racial pretty much genocide of a whole thing, but it goes both ways and not just humans and elves. You can see this, but I love ads. I think ads are a great way to show what the world is because it's just the normal things you show, TV, but it tells you what kind of culture it is. I think I got that from because I used to live in the Philippines when I was a kid, and we get so much ads about hair, cleaning products, and food. But when I got to the United States, it's all about pharmacies, all about like drugs, and so you can see the culture differences by their ads. And so I was like, I can do that with this world. Like I can show how normal things are by just making an ad out of them.
It's so interesting you say that too, because like I don't think about ads as much anymore in like with television, I guess, especially because like all of my television watching is streaming. So it's like you're not really watching commercials. And then I go through old comics all the time on the channel, right? So like there's so many ads in there. And I was even just reading something from like, man, what year was it? I think it was like the early 2000s, and there was still like ads for like, bagel bites or some shit, like, or video games. Like you don't even see that in comics. So it's like, it is interesting, like it is such a timestamp on the world when you look at the type of ads that were coming out. And like you say pharmaceutical, I mean, my God, dude, how many commercials there were for all these fabricated problems that we have as people. And then like all the symptoms they would just fucking list off. Like, it's almost like may cause death. Like, and it's just like, but here, take this pill anyway. So yeah.
And then the next ad would be an attorney. Have you been taking this drug before? You have a right to get a claim or something. It's like, so it just really shows you what the type of world is. And also like when you talk about reading comics, there's ad sections for comics, right? It's one way for them to make money. And those have always felt abrupt to me. Like I don't know where it got milk when you're like in a very pinnacle moment of like like a climax of a story, and then the next page is just got milk. It was like that just threw away the whole mood, right? So I wanted that, invasion of the story breaks of ads with these, like where this guy just came out of nowhere talking about, and spray bottle. But Baldy McDaddy is the character here, and you'll see him throughout the story where he just comes out of nowhere. And I wanted that feeling of ads just showing up out of nowhere, but he's a person embodied by this company. But yeah, and then now of course you see the TV. He's actually on TV, and then there's the battlefield, and it's a random TV in the space because that's what soldiers would have around them. They would have, TVs, radios, they would have anything to make live off. But yeah, and then you have ruins, and you have a duel. This is like the very small scale what the battle is. You saw the aftermath of a big battle, but now you have something more intimate. between two guys, and how visceral that can be with just combat. And so I love hand-to-hand combat, and I love it when they drop swords and just fist fight. That's one of the things that, because it becomes so brutal and primal, where you're just no weapons, just your fists. And I think people forget how, I don't know, it's blunt force trauma with your fists is very, I guess, intimate in a way that your hand is the one killing this person, And so in the end here, in the last two panels, he breaks apart his helmet from the strength he has, and he has this close up in his eyes, it's just stare of like horror, like, oh my god, I killed this dude, and then he's gasping for air because they're in space and just staring at him, and then this kind of spread of like quietness.
Dude, this Mignola vibes, dude.
Thanks. Yeah, I was very into Mignola.
I'm telling you, dude, it's crazy to see how many different influences you have, and I'm gonna call them out every time I see them as we're going through this, but like Mahfood, Mignola, like all my favorite art. That's probably why I love your stuff so much, is because those are two of my favorite artists, and you take bits of them, but they don't look like knockoffs.
Yeah. I think that's I think it's my way of trying to find influences, and how can I put it in the way I want to do it, but it's still there. And of course, throughout time, I get more and more the way I want to do it. And now I think the influences that's showing the most, like James Herron and Daniel Warren Johnson, but I still keep the Mignola vibes still in the back. I think you see it a lot in Tales of Space Knights, the black and white comic. But yeah, I think about atmosphere a lot. So this kind of way of just big spread of just breathing, like, oh, he's dead, and then title page of the comic. You just show off. This is what. So that's the prologue sequence is designed that way to where I set the energy of the story. Okay, this is what the world is about. This is what the energy is about. It's kind of off. It's not really, what you would think. And then I show off, the three stories in the book. So Space Knights is technically an anthology, but not in the way that usual anthology is, because it's different stories, but takes place in the same universe. And some of them take place in a different time. So they bounce off of each other. And so the first story, it's not really prevalent yet because we're still getting geared up. And the second issue is definitely going to be more obvious. And I was looking at a lot of like retro 1950s ads for this stuff. So mostly for the first book, because that's the influence. And then we get the first ad of Beware Giants on the Titan moon of Saturn. And then the next story takes place on the Titan moon. So each ad connects with the story next to it, because it gives you a bit of exposition. There you go. Yeah. And, in giants, right? Those giants live in Titan. And then you see the big anvil with the hammer, but they became a town. So this used to be a giant smith, but now a town. And we start off with there. I like moody, like build ups to stories. And so this is what I've always wanted, where two guys just show up in the town and it's kind of empty because there's a war going on. So all you see is soldiers, and everyone's like, you will see things in the background. So I always put the graffiti is a really good one to use for exposition, and also signs. Like graffiti says, eat humans. So you would see like, political graffitis, you would see racial graffitis, and you would see conscription, all elves and men, whatever, to go to war, because that's a very public thing you will see. Compare billboards from World War II to the Cold War, you will see a difference and tone shift of like, oh, like about like saving your metal, go to war, whatever. And then now it's all about the Red Scare, so you have a different sense of mood for the signs and such.
Yeah, I also really love that all the world just looks lived in, it looks grimy. It looks like some shit has gone down. It's not just like, I love the amount of detail, the little details that you put in. Definitely like add to the story,
Thanks, man. Yeah, I never like clean cities. If someone tried to tell me to draw something clean, I'm like, you're missing out on what I can do. So but go into a tavern. It's always been my idea, because Space Knights before was just a fantasy story, and usually fantasy, they start in a tavern. They start with like, when they all meet up, like D&D casts, you talk about them. So I'm playing with that trope of this, what the story starts, but it's a bit different to where you have frog guys, you have this red elf, and they're hunting this frog cultist. And so that's when it ensues.
Oh yeah, dude,
to the whole battle of just get in a fight right away.
The frog's tongue just like coming out, dude, and the sound effect, dude, that's awesome.
The thing is, too, between these two panels from the right page, I was thinking, should I show him like get up, like show all the action? Like, no, I just cut right away of him on him. I think you can feel it in right away, that but it's so abrupt. and it adds to them being shocked too, and the reader is shocked right away as well. So
It's like how I was shocked when Yoda whipped out that lightsaber in
yeah,
Attack of the Clones. I
exactly.
still remember that, dude, when he fucking that was in
Yeah, I
the
lost my mind.
yeah,
I
the
lost my mind.
entire theater erupted with
Yeah,
claps, dude, because like you just see him like whip out the lightsaber from his robe and just go to town. Like the most unexpected thing that I think they could have done with that movie, in my opinion.
yeah, it was like no, I don't think you're gonna see Yoda with lightsaber because we never associated with him with a lightsaber before.
Yeah.
So and I've thought of that actually when he would move around, he would jump around and stuff. So I've thought about, oh, how does the frog move around in a fight with two big guys? And so he's getting on them, he's doing flips, he's dodging all their hits, and so he's annoying. Practically, that's what it is. He's annoying. And thinking about when I play a lot of games, the things I hate the most when I fight like bosses are flying bosses and the ones that jump around too much, so you can't just land a hit. So this is one of my influences on that. And then of course he has a final form. I was playing around with like, anime manga, they usually the villain has a final form and they're like, what the hell is a final form? It's like, and then they just get tired. Okay, I'm just gonna throw this guy towards my other friend and just slice him off. And they're like, oh shit, that actually worked. And so some things can be just too easy if you're just not complicated with some of this stuff. And this guy's not even that like strong compared to what they're gonna face later on in the next issue. But it's just to set the mood that this kind of story is kind of comedic. The first one, at least, that's the thing about Space Knights, because there's 3 different stories. I want to tell different genres with 3 different stories. They're not meant to be the same. And I think that's just kind of me showing off that this world, you can practically do anything you want with it. It's just a skin. You can have a detective story, you can have a superhero story, you can have a war story, or you can have like 2 buddy cop stories, which is this one. And so yeah. But
do you have like not like a Bible, but do you have like a notebook full of like different ideas of where to go, different characters?
I have a lot of notebooks. Actually, I just moved recently, so I gone through my boxes of just full of journals, and I took some out. Like, oh, I wrote this. I forgot about this story. Some of these characters are as old as when I was in high school, because these are things I would just write. But of course, they're not the same anymore. But the names would keep the same. But some of the story ideas are the same. And so I have a lot of writing matter, mostly in college, when I still have those ideas and I'm still going to use them. Mostly for the next story, Iron Hand. That's the character I made in college. And so he's going to be something that I have a lot of writing matter that I'm going to go back to. So after my move, I got those notebooks out. I'm like, okay, I got to get this together. And so.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of lore, that's the thing too, like where the world building took me a long time and it actually scared me. I wasn't sure how to proceed. It's like, oh my God, it's so huge. But then I just thought about think of like, you have all this world, but think of this microscope thing right there in the center.
Right.
I try to treat it like the way Star Wars did, where you have this massive world with Star Wars, but then you just see the small guys, the little droid, the little farm boy, they kind of explore the world and the reader explores that world that I built. I don't have to tell them everything. I can just show them as they go. Yeah,
that's the cool thing of, oh man, yeah, look at this thing, dude. Yeah.
It took me a long time. I remember like the thing that took me a long time actually was the planet. I had to draw every single line inside that thing. And I think it was like 3 a.m. But yeah, I never shy away on just putting effort and time into my work. I always just do my best I can. And this is like during college. So I was still going to school. I had work and I would come home and draw. This is
also your first book for everybody watching this. Like
it is. This
is what you came out with for your first fucking comic. It's crazy, dude. Like I know that I'm probably repeating myself because it's been a couple of years since we talked about this book, but I remember just being blown away when you reached. I think you reached out to me or I reached out. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But I remember when I saw the first piece of art from it, I was like, oh my God. And then like that doesn't even prepare you for when you see it in person. Like getting to see all your little sketch cards when we met, because we got to meet in person, which was awesome at LA Comic Con last year. And if I had more money, I would have bought all those sketch cards because like each one of them, you put like the detail in it and like the time and effort. Like I think I got Etrigan. I think that's what I got from you.
You're the one that got Etrigan. I was wondering where that went. I was like, who got who?
I love Demon, dude. I love that character.
Yeah, I love drawing him. I think the thing about me is like anything Jack Kirby, I would love to draw. I think comfort character right now is MODOK. At Heroes Con, I just kept drawing MODOK from memory because I just love the character, and every
That's
time
awesome.
somebody just catch something, MODOK right away. But yeah,
DC
man,
needs to give you a Fourth World book. That's what needs to happen, dude. That's what I
I
want to
do
see.
I do have a plan with something with Fourth World. When I get extra time, hopefully by Heroes next year, I'll print out a bootleg for Fourth World.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking something with Big Barda and Granny Goodness, of just the two obscure characters that no one really shows off too much. It's just all.
That's what I was choosing between.
Know?
I almost got Mr. Miracle, but then I'm like, if I get Mr. Miracle, I got to get Big Barda too, and I'm like,
you have to, you gotta. But yeah, man. So going back to this, like talking about Jack Kirby, he's my biggest influence the way I do space. If you can see the Kirby dots. Actually, I drew Kirby dots very differently at multiple times. This one I was using a lot of brush, and then go back here. Here I was using Q-tips. So I was using Q-tips in here, and then this one I was using a lot of brushes.
Because this is all traditional, right? Everything
all
you do
traditional.
is traditional.
Yeah, except colors. That's pretty much it. Except colors. That's it. But the handwriting, everything is all traditional.
Old school, dude. That's what I like to hear.
I think it's because I love having all the inks in one place. I don't like having. I tried lettering digitally first. If not with Space Knights, but some other work, and I hated it. It was boring. It felt pasted on. I tried to make it look handwritten, and I just didn't like it. Hunting for fonts sucked. And so I said, you know what? Actually, when I watched Cartoonist Kayfabe, was around this time when I got really into it. And then they kept advocating for hand lettering. Like Jim Rugg, I think, was the one that really got me to, I think I started reading Street Angel. And I said, you know what? I should do hand lettering. I need to do this. I want to do this. And it felt like drawing, it didn't feel like I'm just writing words. And so, yeah.
It adds another layer to, when it comes to comic books, I nerd out about every aspect of it, whether it's the pencils, the inks, lettering too. I love hand lettering. You can tell because there's just like that extra little cherry on top for me, at least when you get to see it. And then the design too. And I think that's why certain people's stuff just stands out to me. And Jim, that's one of the things I love about Jim Rugg the most too. Yeah, that dude designs a book
exactly. I think that's why I love his work too. I think he's really one of my muses for comics. I've always named James Hare and McMinnell and all them, but I think Jim Rugg is the one I really captured because the way he designs books, like you said, he treats them like artifacts, an actual object. That's why I never want to buy something digital from him. I always want to buy something physical. It's one of the guys that gives you a reason to buy a physical book. And so I try to emulate that with my work to where my books are meant to be physical. These are meant to be seen on paper. But,
I don't think I've ever bought something digital, and I never will. If they stop printing comics, I might have to stop. I'll print them out, I guess. I don't know.
Print out your own. I think that's what Jerome does, right?
Yeah, the king of making bootlegs, dude.
I know. But yeah, man, here's another ad for the next story. So the ads are kind of like ad breaks. I think I started thinking about it too. I'm very influenced with animation. Thinking about, old Boomerang cartoons and Cartoon Network. They would have 3 stories in one episode, like Dexter would have 2 Dexter episodes, and the last one's Super Friends or something like that. And then you would have the ad breaks between them. So I think that's kind of what I thought about too. It's a nice transition too. Like I said, it connects with the story next to it.
I love ads, dude.
Yeah,
I love ads.
Yeah, and these Silver Knights are just kind of pretty much, religious cops of the church. My idea was, what if the Catholic Church actually enforced the laws of the Catholic Church? They actually had cops going around, but that showed off to me that religion is beyond countries, right? So they would have jurisdiction anywhere the Catholic Church existed. That means Europe, United States, whatever it may be, right? So in this sense, we have 2 warring factions where the elves and men, but they believe in the same religion. So these guys are mixed breed of elves and men together in the same church, but they have to still enforce the church laws. But there's a bit of conflict within that faction too. So, but you don't see that yet until later. That's what it is. I just wanted to, because it's kind of scary to actually see a church enforce something, because it can be very fanatical, you know. And then the next picture is these Silver Knights getting torn up, and it's telling you to join them. And the next one's like, oh,
look at that, dude. It's the flesh on here is just crazy. And that Iron Hand logo reminds me of Youngblood. Was it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
right.
I was the thing about Iron Hand is that his story is very influenced to superhero stories. His colors is blue, red, and blue and red and yellow. So there's primary colors. But I'm breaking it down to where we've seen a lot of like I forgot what that term is when you break down superhero stories to where what they really are. Deconstruction. There you go. But I'm not approaching it that way to where deconstruction of heroes, but more of like what we see ourselves as heroes. Like, oh, my hero person is let's say Jim Rugg. But then you start to think, do I want to meet Jim Rugg? You want to see that, keep that wall between a hero and then you, or you want to actually have some connection with that. And that's something I've always been thinking about. And then going to Heroes Con, I was actually selective on the people I wanted to meet. I wanted to just meet certain people. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was going by Iron Hand, is that this is someone that he's a gladiator. And thinking about like wrestling, wrestling guys are usually icons for kids. Like, oh my God, like as a kid, I loved John Cena. That's like the face of that time in the 2000s, where he's like the guy's always a good guy that, everyone wants to emulate. And so I thought about that about Iron Hand. He's the face of the gladiator matches, but do you want to meet him? Do you actually want to see who he is as a character? And so you get to see his life and who he is. And so, but of course the story starts with the Doom Gods, which is like this primordial gods, which is actually church is kind of destroy. And then they're killing all these Silver Knights and so on. And then of course it spread. I was reading Little Bird at this time. And
dude, so I love that book. People don't talk about that book enough, man.
Dude, Ian Bertram is amazing. Yeah. His art is so good. And so that's something that it kind of got to me when I was drawing this. And funny enough, when I was working on this, I was my last semester in college and I got really sick. And this is before COVID happened, when most sick I've ever been. I was out for like a month. And this was the last page I did until I took a good break. And so drawing the last panels, I was like gasping for air. I was tired. And I think it showed through with the art of these guys are just getting shredded and just dying, And so, and then after that, I took, I think, a good month break till I did this part of the page. And it was hard. It was actually really hard for me to get back, but I kept pushing through. And so I think that's what because I teach on the side. I teach kids how to make comics and, drawing. And some of the kids are starting doing their comics now. Like, Kevin, I'm doing a comic now. And I told them, like, just remember, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're going to have moments where you want to collapse and not work on it again, but just keep going, come back to it if you need to, but just keep going. It's never going to be perfect. And this is one of those moments for me between these two pages, is that if I stopped here, I don't think the book would ever be out. There would never be Space Knights, and all the stuff that's happened to me, that would never happen. And so I was glad at this moment that I came back. Talk about commentary, but yeah,
Yeah, no, that's the whole reason I love doing this. Is not just like hearing how you made it or the influence. It's like the story behind, like, when you're creating it, because it's the books, like, you're spending time with them, right? Like I don't create comics, but I read enough of them, and hearing what you as a creator are going through personally when you're creating this just adds another layer to when I'm reading the book. So now, like, when I reread it, I'm going to have those thoughts in my head, and it's going to mean something different to me as a fan, as a reader, than it did maybe when I was just reading it just in like, oh, this is dope art. Like, this is great. But
to me, whenever when I sell my original art for this story, I go back, because I stash them in a portfolio, right? And then when I take them out, because I haven't taken them out for like, I don't know how many years now, take them out to get sent, I start seeing the actual art in front of me again. You seeing the strokes, like, I remember that. And I start remembering my mental space, what I was at that time. And it becomes very cathartic, and it becomes kind of melancholy that I have to get rid of it. Like, here you go, I'm giving it away to someone else now. But I relived those memories. And the same thing when I go through my book again, that, now it's just, I just see this and I see this in an instant. But to me, to get here to here was hard. It was hard for me to overcome that, because I was sick. I was tired. I actually quit my job at that time because it was so much. And so, it's just nice to, like, hey, that I went through that. I persevere, and now I'm here doing more. And now we get to Iron Hand. This was the thing I was trying to get to with this book, was just to show him off.
He was actually Warren Johnson right here for me.
Yeah, pretty much. This is what I wanted to get to, because I made actually, we'll see in the back later on, the short story I did for my college class before this was actually created. He was the character there. And so the inspiration for this was, wrestling. But I love knights, so I love tournaments from, medieval times. So I kind of combined that both to where you have the kayfabe of wrestling, but with knights in their arenas. It's kind of the same atmosphere. And so, yeah. And then here is the funny part. This part with the right side hand page, we show off Vurag with this the elephant guy.
Yeah.
When I wrote the scene, it was actually just going to be a normal dude. It was just going to be another knight, and it's going to have a big duel. But I just kept saying to myself, that's so boring. How can I make this something more? And like, I just draw a big ass elephant. Like it just this. And I was watching Lord of the Rings at that time, so I was watching the third movie with the Mumakils, the big elephants.
Oh yeah.
And so I've always felt that impact of them showing up. Like, oh my god, that's a big dude. Like, it's a big elephant. So I wanted that capture that same energy here. And so it just shows off Iron Hand's skill and
and the
strength.
dude's tusks too, man. Like they're fucking spiky and shit. His eye, one of them just pinpointed red with like just shadow over it. It's fucking, and look how he towers over him too. Like that's terrifying, dude.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, a lot of people have drawn him. We recently had Matt Allison, Eli, reached out to him to do the back cover for the next issue. Well, actually, it was going to be a pinup, but I decided to be a back cover. And so it's him, the elephant. But sadly, because I killed him off in this story, so now Erwin Papa has drawn him too. Chris Anderson has drawn him. So I'm like, I killed him off. So I'm gonna find a way to somehow bring him back, but not him particularly, but the elephant people. But yeah, so this fight scene, it just goes off to him. I wanted to be more creative.
You could always do a fucking, like a one-off, like zine again, like a short one, and just the backstory of him. That would be dope.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the thing about Space Knights. I can do that kind of stuff with the story. It's very flexible. But yeah, here the fight actually was pretty challenging to do this fight because he is big, right? How do I make it work to where these two characters are fighting in this one arena, but the other guy is really big? And Iron Hand has these jet boots, so he can move around a lot. But I wanted to be more creative, like I said, the hand-to-hand combat. And Iron Hand doesn't have a weapon. He uses his fists. And he does have a weapon, but we'll find out more in the story later on in the next issues. But
that top left panel, dude. I love that.
Yeah, he just punches him across because he gets smacked. Of course, you want to hit him back with something you got. And it shows all that, all that Tuscan teeth just torn off, right? And I talk about the intimate of like hand-to-hand combat. And then I wanted to use his his trunk too, moving him around. He gets stabbed and so on. And this is the part that he flies off and just punches him right in the skull and shows off that his name is Iron Hand for a reason. He is able to use his fists as weapons. And this is like when it calms down and people are raging his name. And then he has a moment to look at his hand, like, I just killed this dude. That's the thing I always want to show to people that, I think killing in stories, real life, has weight to them. That's why PTSD exists. That's why soldiers that survive war, they just still have to survive after. When you take a life, it's not just, I just took a life, and there's dark humor to that as well for them to cope. And so, but there's moments to where you pull that trigger, you use your hands to kill someone. It's an in-between moment to like, oh, I just did that, and then of course he shrugs it off and moves away because he's done this many times. But later on, of course, he haunts him. But there's those moments that I try to show off. But behind that, it's all cheering his name's like, oh my God, he's so amazing, awesome. Because people love violence, I love violence. That's why I'm making this comic. Yeah. But I want to show off, of course, that violence is a double-sided blade. For our entertainment, there's people getting hurt. And so and then
the announcer, was that McFarlane or Miller?
The announcer, very Miller. Because like I said, Dark Knight was all right. TVs, Yeah. So it goes back to Baldy McDaddy. He also hosts and announces these fights. He's the face of it all. So you'll see him throughout the story. And at this point, I think I'll start deciding that I'm going to design him after my face. And so I started drawing his face like mine. You see that top right panel? Yeah. So it's pretty much me. And that's then funny. And then this is when we find out about more of Iron Hand's story with his missing kid that he had. But yeah, those are very short, and it goes to the next story too. And like I said, the interaction between the next story and the ad. This one's about a gun you can buy. to pretty much kill elves with. And so, you can see piles of bodies in the back. And then we see the next story is called Mahfood Hill. This is very, World War II inspired, World War One kind of thing, where I watched a lot of Saving Private Ryan as a kid.
I love that movie. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I love that movie. I think as a kid, I never really knew the weight of it until I watch it now. The beginning part is so much disturbing to me now. When I watch it as a kid, I'm like, whoa, that's so crazy, machine guns. Now I'm like, oh my God, those are people. So it's a whole different thing when you become an adult, to where violence becomes something else.
Hey, it's the same thing with like becoming a parent, dude. Like there's certain stories or movies I read before I had a kid, and I'm like, man, that's sad. But then like now it's like I'll get that like feeling in my gut, or like my eyes will well up when something happens to a child. It's like even Saga. I've talked about this many times.
Yeah, Saga.
Reading Saga after having a kid was a completely different reading experience than I had and I loved it before, but it's just like completely different experience.
Yeah, because you start to understand what the decisions they make. Because before you being a parent, you kind of judge them for it. Like, why would you do that? Like, it's so stupid. But then as a parent, that makes sense. I would do that, But in here, to where, I said, when I was watching Saving Private Ryan when I was a kid, I saw them as all grown-ups, the soldiers, But now as an adult, I'm like, those are teenagers, These are like 18 to 17-year-olds sometimes. And now I'm like, oh my God, And so, this is the way I start the story, is just to familiarize people that these are people. They're just hanging out, trading food. I'll give you a gum for the tooth in your helmet. It's soldiers collect trinkets. They always do, little trophies. I got this from The Things We Carry, from the Vietnam book. I forgot his name. It's based on a true story. They would carry little talismans, like a card, a piece of tooth, or something. And so I've always thought about that, soldiers collecting stuff. And so they're trading tickets. Oh, like, I don't know, give you this tickets. Like, we're gonna be a battle. His name is Dear Myra. So he's talking about his wife, and the guy chewing the gum is the one that wrote the letter. And so we have this moment of just intimacy with the writing, but then the thing you're actually seeing contradicts that. And then you see Marcus here with the guy with the green armor. He's kind of like the face of this issue. And they get ready for battle, and it's a drop ship. They're inside this little ship, and the door opens. This is very much like D-Day. When the door opens, they just pour out and they get shot right away. And then the guy that was trading gum with just dies. The guy that wrote the letter just dies. I love the
color, dude. The color that you chose, this like bright magenta, neon colors, like while this like fucking horrible battle is going on. It's it's such an awesome contrast to like, you have bright colors, but something really dark is happening at the same time.
Like here, you can see that the tone change with the color. Inside the ship is very gray, but it's still red. And then when it opens, the pink just pours out. You can see the bullet holes from the door with the pink, and then it opens, it just floods the whole scene with that magenta. And so I wanted to show that in the change of environment. And then they just start fighting. You see all the explosions, and then you get the big spread of what the actual scale of the war is, because we had a taste of it from the beginning of the book, to where you saw the aftermath, you saw the duel between two knights, but now how is the actual battles go? So we have these weird pyramid machines, this giant in the back, spaceships, this I wanted Kirby, dude. Exactly. I wanted to show the scale. I've always thought about this, I've always imagined the fight between New Genesis and Apocalypse, the battle between them. And so I don't think I had never really seen it in this scale. I think we saw the very beginning of New Gods, to where the old world is, right? You saw that little part. And I think I've tried to get that here. Also, Walt Simonson's Ragnarok. That was something I've always thought about, the way he does his battle scenes, the scale of it all. So I put a dragon in there, because why not? That was the thing. It's like, I was like, it's fantasy. I can do whatever I want with this. And just, what's the thing that can really cause havoc in here? Was a dragon, and I didn't go for like a brown, whatever dragon. I went for a really bright blue cyan dragon,
He's also got that thing inside his mouth. It's like attached.
It is. So it's kind of an enhancer. Funny thing is, that actually came from a dream. I think a week before I did this, I just dreamt I was riding a dragon, and for some reason I just saw the shot of the dragon with his mouth open, and there's something inside its mouth, and it was like helping him breathe this fire, and it's just all the saliva coming out of it. And so in my head, I need to put that in my book. Like, it's such a cool thing to have. It makes it more, because it is space fantasy. Of course, these dragons would have something enhanced to them.
Yeah.
So
I love that missile he shoots off on the bottom right page.
yeah.
Eat shit.
Yeah, yeah. I've always, like I said, those bombs back in World War II, they would have like "Hello, Hitler," or whatever. They would put like little messages,
Yeah.
you know. So like, that's culture of soldiers and stuff. I will try to put in there. And this is like a slow. I like to slow the moment for a bit when it's high energy, and then bring it back up again. Like
Yeah.
here, I like this one. I think when I first started using this small panel thing on the bottom, the right page, where you see little shots of the panels where to show, because you think about establishing shots, right? When you show off the whole image of the environment. But I like to zoom in. It's like what's that guy's face? What's that guy's hand look like? People are shaking. It's kind of like a rapid cut. Thinking about, if you're thinking about movies, but in comics,
very cinematic. Yeah,
exactly. And then now we have this. Of course, it goes back to the combat. And I've always thought about these like little suicide bombers that the elves would use, because the elves are very inspired by Soviet Union kind of thing, where they would just throw bodies, And I've thought about, small guys can fit into small places, so they can have bombs on their back, and so they just come out with those bombs and then they attack, and then you have this big spread of the battle. I was reading 300 at this time by Frank Miller again, and so I really got that sense of combat the way he did it.
How long did that double page take you?
Funny enough, it took me one day.
What the fuck?
Yeah, this took me one day. It was crazy. I think at that time, because I couldn't afford to be too slow. Yeah, because I was, like I said, I was going to college and I had work. When I had no days off, it would be go to school, and my off school days would be at work. I actually was working at Blick, and so I would do that, and so never really had a break. And then and it goes back to more intimate fights again. I like to do big and then go small, and then it goes back to the Dragon Rider. And of course, you get like this racial slurs about the fight. Funny enough, in this time, I actually drew different pages after the right. On the right page was actually different. I didn't like what I drew. I drew about like 8 pages. I trashed them.
Oh,
I didn't like them. Yeah, I didn't throw them away. They're still around, but like I just said, these are terrible. And so I went back and redid them, and then this what came out. I think it's a lot better than what I had before, which I'm not going to share ever, but
that's fine. Yeah, no, I mean, these are great, dude. I mean, I can only imagine, like, after perfecting it too, like these are phenomenal pages.
So here I'm thinking about more like, you guys, this leg, the tackling. So the choreography of the fights, I want to be more unique. And like he grabs the tube that he breathes oxygen with, he pulls it out, and the guy's like, I yield, and just no mercy, right? He pokes his eye out, and then his face mask is off. And you see his face all dead. And then, that moment of coming back up and then just breathing and then showing that, reaction to war again. I think I got a comment. His name's Warwick. He's the writer for Irwin's work. We were talking on his Twitch, and he talked about how much I drew eyes. And it's something I didn't really realize. I draw a lot of eyes in my stuff. Even though they're all wearing helmets, I always tend to show eyes to them to show the humanity of, like, the horror and the feelings. And so that's what happened in the bottom right panel. It's one of my favorites, actually. It's just him seeing the battle and all his friends and even the elves. He's seeing the gore of it. And then, of course, he gets back into the mode of fighting. He fights these like frog knights. I have frog knights in this thing, which is pretty fun.
Yeah,
and he has this like burst of energy for violence. It's like, slaughter them all, victory is ours, whatever. And then a minotaur cuts his hand off later on. But he has this moment of like, I show, because there's a story for these guys. This issue is mostly just having you have an experience what Space Knights is. It's not really about more of the story. It's more about what this world is, and you get to feel it. Just throwing you in there. But you get the hint of like some backstory with Marcus here, with the guy wearing the green armor. When he was a kid, he's playing with an elf. And so there was a time when these two races got along. And then now he goes back into the reality, and then cavalry charge of the elves showed up. This idea,
dope.
This wasn't going to be here, actually. The idea came out when I was riding an Uber, and the driver said, because I was going to school. I was like, what do you do for a living? Whatever. I'm like, I like to do comics. Right now I'm working on a story called Space Knights. Oh, Knights in Space. They have horses there too. I'm like, they should. And so I came back home. I just thought of this idea of just like these metallic like horses,
Hell
and
yeah.
just yeah. So it had horns. The thing is I love unicorns, and so I want to put horns in these like freaking horses. And so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it goes back to the last page of the eyes again. It was reaction, and that's pretty much what the stories are for Space Knights, and everything else, of course, are ads and
Mm-hmm.
talk about joining the Imperial Army with the humans. After you saw that, would you really want to join? And so it's kind of like the funny contradiction and contrast, and more, of course, ads of little things here and there, and then we got guest artists.
Yeah, it's a great first book, dude. I love that we got to kind of show this off and go through it
Yeah.
because I mean, just getting to hear more of the story behind it was really dope.
And
This is
here's
definitely
the
not in my edition. Yeah.
no, this is the actually it's cut out here. I think my PDF is missing the left part, but this is the very first Space Knights book I did. Not book, it was like a short story. It was actually a project for my teacher. He was gonna collect us. Our final project was to do a short story, and I wanted to do this like 16-page, gladiator match with knights,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what it was, and I didn't get to finish it. He told me that 16 pages is too much, so I did 8, and he said I don't have time. He gave me like a due date, so I did 6 of just the introduction to the story, and then he lied. I actually had 2 weeks because he just didn't believe in me. I was so mad, and so I think that anger created the book, and so a part of me is like, thank God, I did have that anger.
Got to take
But
inspiration where you can get it. You know what I mean?
I know.
Whatever gets you to that point, man. I mean, like you hear it in sports all the time too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially, I mean, first name that comes to mind is like Kobe, dude. Like, you used to talk shit to him, dude. He'll light
Yeah,
you up, man. He would blow you off the
exactly.
fucking court if you talk shit. Oh, you can stop me? All right, let me show you what's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
I think that's what it is too. I'm very competitive with myself. I think my biggest adversary is myself, but I do compete a lot when I was in art classes. I don't tell this to my friends and my classmates, but I look at their art in my head, and my goal is to beat them. But I never say it out loud. I don't think I've said it out loud actually. So hopefully they don't hate me now. But I've always said that in the end of the year, I'm like, I did it. I've accomplished something, and it's always the way I get better. So now I don't have people to compete with. I just look at Instagram, but it's still in my mind. I look at other professional artists. I'm like, I want to be as best as that or better. I always do that now too. So, but here's some of the fantasy work before Space Dance was space fantasy. This was regular fantasy. See watercolors and such. But yeah, and then you have Space Knights #2, and then you have the Tales of Space Knights, which we're gonna be showing off.
All right, man. Yeah, dude, this has been a blast going through this. I can't wait for the second book. I'm excited to talk the Tales from Space Knights 2 with you. For everybody listening and watching, make sure you go buy the book, Cosmic Line Productions. The link's down below. Kevin's links will be down below too, where you can follow him and stay up to date on all his dope art. Get some commissions from him. You won't be disappointed. Kevin, thank you so much again for doing this. It's always a blast chatting comics.
Thank you, Ryan.